Listen, I've said this to him personally, and we've said it to his team ad nauseum. We've said that we're open at every level to try to find more savings in this project. There's no pushback from our side that this is an absolute cost. I think that we're more to the contrary. We're more saying we're quite reasonable about this, and these are our best estimates. The other advantage of Portal, which we didn't talk about, is it's a piece of the broader family of projects, and therefore, by definition, it has less sticker shock. You know, you're now not talking 12 or 15, or if you add in Penn Station, 20-something billion. You're talking $1.5 billion-ish dollars, and that's, you know, my view is if you can begin in bite sizes, you also increase meaningfully the probability that you'll find common ground on the rest of the elements of the broader family. Please.
Are you surprised that the right to die law has had this much challenge and has been an issue?
I'm not a lawyer, so I can't comment from a legal perspective. It's very emotional. It was emotional and hard for me to get there, but I feel strongly that the law needs to be defended, and it is the right decision. That it should not be the law that dictates the end. It should be family and personal considerations with, importantly, lots of belts and suspenders. And this law, I was satisfied, has that in it, and I'm gratified that the courts have so far agreed. Please.
Governor, with summer coming to a close.
Were you also on the left? I want to make sure that
I was on the left.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm making up for lost time here.
So just with summer coming to a close, much of Lake Hopatcong still no swimming advisory for most of the summer. And
Yep.
There's still a handful of lakes here. What conversations have you had with the DEP in terms of how to prevent this in the future?
Well, listen, this is not just a Lake Hopatcong. It's multiple lakes in New Jersey, and you probably have seen it's now evidencing itself around the country. This is a real explicit fallout from climate change. And the nutrients for these harmful and dangerous algae are things like stormwater runoff, fertilizers, fertilizer that gets washed through excessive rain and heat into the body of water, and it unfortunately helps these algae bloom, and they're very dangerous. As you've probably seen, pets can die, and humans can get quite sick. So it's real, not just in New Jersey, but more broadly. The DEP has been vigilant. They've been trying to open up as many sections of these lakes, in particular Lake Hopatcong, as possible. I have enormous sympathy and empathy with the folks who live on the lake, particularly the commerce piece of this that's been impaired, and I have enormous sympathy with that. It's pretty clear we need new systems in place that effectively separate stormwater runoff, fertilizer runoff from clean water access, including that which goes into a lake like Lake Hopatcong. So we will be doing, as you mentioned, Labor Day's on Monday. We're going to do a complete post-mortem and figure out what we can do, not just ourselves, but with those local communities and the counties, to do everything we can to ensure we don't have another summer that looks like that.
Governor,
hold on, let me just, I'll come, I promise I'll get to you.
The Senate president yesterday told Bloomberg that he believes that New Jersey is in worse financial shape than Illinois because New Jersey has fewer levers to pull when it comes to raising funds, hasn't been borrowing as much. Do you agree with him?
Well, listen, I inherited part of the reason I got elected was, a big part of it was to fix the economy. So I inherited a fiscal mess that was building for a lot of years. So we've been at it for 18 or 19 months now. We inherited, on the one hand, some big structural deficits, pensions. So we're rated as one of the most challenging pension systems, although we have made back-to-back the two biggest pension payments in the history of the state. Property taxes, which we wake up every day trying to break the back of. There's no question about that, but we also inherited a state that is revenue starved. Both, if you look at revenues that we used to be able to rely on, I'll pick the millionaires, which is one you've heard from me many times before, that got canceled probably 8 or 9 years ago. That's a cumulative, this is an important point to make, it's not just $500 million a year, it's $4 to $5 billion cumulatively that we don't have that we could have. The gimmick of cutting the sales tax, which was a gimmick, is now 2.5 plus 2 3/4 years since that's happened. That's about $2 billion. And then the other piece of revenues, we didn't grow. So we're trying to address all of the above. Get our pension system stable, crack the back of the property tax crisis, continuing to pursue tax fairness and equity and new sources that we think are reasonable, and probably as importantly, if not more so, to grow the economy again, which is the biggest source of potential revenue. Right.
So we know now that the Senate President has tasked former Senators Lesniak and Carrillos with working on some new tax incentive legislation, I guess in hopes of cutting a deal with you. I think Senator Lesniak told us that he's met with some of your staffers about it. Do you find this a promising step? I mean, do you think they're listening to what you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, I have not spoken to Ray about it, although he and Joe Carrillos came in and met with some senior members of our team, and by all accounts, the readout from that meeting was good. I spoke to Joe yesterday. We had a good conversation. He and I have known each other for 20 years, and that's a good data point. I also think that we had good conversations leading up to the quorum call last week. So I also want folks to know that we weren't there yet, but there was a good senior staff series of discussions. I think more in the Assembly than the Senate, but I think on both sides. I continue to be an optimist. I said to Joe yesterday, there are certain elements of this that we care deeply about, and there are certain other elements that others care deeply about, and I think there's a reasonable amount of common ground, and I'm hopeful we'll get there sooner
Do
than
you
later.
think the biggest sticking point at this point is your insistence on a cap and making sure there's an annual cap?
I don't know enough to be able to answer that for sure. So again, I continue to be optimistic we'll get there. Charlie, I started to make you move there.
No, it's okay. Do you have any sense now how many Newark homes where that have been given filters, how many are not working properly given the amount of testing that's going on? And when are we going to hear those results? I mean, this whole alarm has been based, as you have said repeatedly, on three data points. Isn't it time for the residents to have a more complete picture?
It certainly is, and nobody's holding anything back. I think what you heard in a press conference that was held, I guess, 2 days ago, is we don't want to, I don't think Newark wants to, I know we don't want to jump to a conclusion on an incomplete set of data. So Newark is now pursuing in the hundreds of data points. My gut is, I think I said on Monday, or Mayor Baraka did, my guess is this is a couple of weeks away. And in the meantime, on the folks who are served by the Pequannock Reservoir and have lead lines, bottled water for drinking and cooking, you don't have to worry about bathing. In particular, we want to make sure pregnant women, nursing, kids, and the elderly and infirm.
Do you know, I mean, based on what has been tested so far,
Can
you have a sense for whether this is a pervasive problem or not?
I don't, and I don't think anyone does. Those are the questions that we are collectively trying to get, and I say collectively, it's the city, the county, the state, the EPA. We want to make sure, is it the filter? Was it that home? Was it that particular lead line? Is this a broader issue or a more narrow issue? This orthophosphate, which is running through the water, that's a good thing. The early signs are good.
The filters at this point.
I'm sorry?
The testing is only
on filters, correct.
So you don't know all those other issues.
No, they also test the orthophosphate regularly to make sure that it's coming through, and that's another plea that you've heard the mayor and myself and others. Even if you're using bottled water, keep flushing your lines, because that gets that orthophosphate that essentially is a prophylactic on the inside of the pipe and prevents lead leaching.
Going back to the grow, do you think lawmakers forced their
Daniel, you asked me 50 questions yesterday.
Yes, I did. Now 51.
Okay, good.
Going back to grow, do you think lawmakers forced their hand to act on it by calling the quorum?
I have no insight on that. We did what we said we would do. Again, the conversations were productive before, and I hope they'll continue to be after.
Do you support Hoboken's use of eminent domain for the Union dry dock situation?
I would say this: we are working very hard to try to find common ground that addresses transportation matters, local community matters, environmental matters, and I'm optimistic that we'll get there at some point sooner or later.
Have you had any conversations with lawmakers about marijuana since Sweeney made his comments that we might see a bill later in the year?
I'm sure I have. I had said at the time, so when Steve and Nick Scuteri said that they were going to kick it to a referendum in 2020, I said at the time, gosh, I would love one more bite at the apple. That seems a long way off, particularly given the social justice piece and how many lives are going to be impacted every day. And I was very happy to see a few weeks ago that there was a statement, I think, by the Senate President that they may want to take another bite at the apple. So I'm sure, I know our teams have, I'm sure I have. It's something I'm,
Nothing's
just say
changed,
publicly or privately, I'm all in to try that. I don't know on the vote count, he would be closer to it than I. We were there in the Assembly in March, we were almost there in the Senate. I don't know of any evidence that we've lost ground, and I hope that if anything, we've gained a little bit of ground. Michael and I gotta run.
On the lead service lines, it's an immediate crisis in Newark, but it's a problem beyond that in a lot of different parts of the state.
Yep.
So what should be the state's role in
So I don't think, let me tell the Newark story for 30 seconds and then say that there's a similar there are different but similar protocols in place with a number of the other communities that are impacted by this. This goes back, I think the original chemical that was run through the lead pipes to basically prevent the leaching started in 1997, something called silica. And that was run through successfully, tested regularly, I think every 2 or 3 years, with with Newark, their consultant, the DEP, the EPA, all part of that. That worked for 20 years. So there wasn't a replacement plan in place, but it worked for 20 years. The only exception, I think the mayor spoke to this on Monday, were the schools where it wasn't lead lines, it was lead fixtures and lead basins. And that was in 2016 and it was addressed. For whatever reason in the year 2017, I'm not a chemist, but there's some sense that there was a different requirement of acidity in the water, but for whatever reason the silica ceased to have the same level of effectiveness. And so that started a series of steps that have been taken over time. That triggered ultimately the mayor beginning the 10-year process, which they now hope to do faster, of replacing the lead lines. It led to more testing. It led to switching several months ago to a new chemical that folks have optimism around. It led to distributing thousands of filters to those folks who have the lead lines. And then based on these 3 data points where the filters brought the lead levels down, but not sufficiently, it led to the bottled water. So there isn't the same reality or the same exact protocol, but in the communities, if you look at a Patterson or a Trenton and Mahan, where's Mahan? He and I had this. Mahan, what was the other community you and I were talking? Patterson, Trenton, Sussex and Warren County. There are protocols that are in place. I don't know the exact frequency of the testing, but there's testing that happens with the DEP and EPA involved. And if there's a lead exceedance, there are steps that are taken, and that those protocols are ongoing in the other communities. We can get you more specific details. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.